Today's vlog is actually going to be about magic. Not only what it is, but who can actually do magic. So let's get the who can do magic out of the way. Everybody. Everybody has the ability to do magic. But the question is, what is magic? So we need to actually define it in order to discuss what it is. I will deep dive in a future video, especially if you're interested. If you're interested, put it in the comments. But in a future video, I can deep dive the word magic and focus more on its origin, the meaning of the word. In this vlog, I just wanted to kind of talk about it because it was something that had come up in conversation based upon a few comments that I've had in talking with some other people. So some of the comments that I've had on my YouTube videos, people were asking, what do you need to do in order to access magic? And who's able to do magic? And do you have to have special, do you need to be born with it? Do you have to have special abilities you're born with? The way that I typically think of magic, and I'll go through a few definitions and examples because let's not just go off of hearsay, is I've always think of magic as being this natural part of life and existence. That you can work with the world around you through different methods and means. One of these, of course, is science. Another one is magic. I think the two are closely interlinked. I think magic is about bringing out and manifesting things that are inside your deepest thoughts and feelings. So I actually consider like music and artwork magic. Many people might not, and that's fine, but I consider all the sciences magic. And I think that there's an extra realm beyond just artwork and the creative process, that there's also the ability to bring things through your force of will. And there's different ceremonial rituals that you can do, which is ceremonial magic. But then there's also just using your own thoughts by using affirmations or repeating something, speaking with authority, believing in it, directing your will and energy, giving someone a hug and meaning it. You can feel that. To me, that's all magic. I think the entire world we live in is very magical, and individuals who choose to pursue magic can do so. Everybody's capable of doing it. In fact, I view it very similar to actual natural talents. Like some people might have an aptitude for drawing and artwork, but they can learn how to develop those skills further by doing specific practices that others can teach. This would, of course, fall into different types of magic traditions. This is just how I view it. So 100% believe anyone is capable of doing magic, and we all do it, even subconsciously to a certain degree in our everyday lives. So let's talk a little bit about definition, because I know a couple people might be like, nah, it's not magic, or you don't think of magic right. In fact, I would counter and argue with that I think the average person doesn't think of magic right. I think many cases they think of fantasy and fiction. But just like in fantasy and fiction, we have real life emulated in a fictional world about the different type of physical feats we can do, whether it be a great warrior or adventurer. Likewise with magic, we have it over-exaggerated as well, because it's fiction. Let's pull up a few sites. So to begin with, the way that I understand it is I actually thought that magic's origin was through a religion called Zoroastrianism. And it apparently still exists today over there in Iran. I'm pulling up Britannica. As always, with all of the sites that I pull up, I'm going to put the links down below so you can read these yourself. I think it's very important to share sites. Share resources, share information, share books, share your sources. In many cases, especially in past videos, I just go off of what I remember. I read it somewhere. I talked about it. I made it up because it was my own thoughts, it was my own opinion, my own interpretation. I want to be very clear going forward where I'm getting some stuff from. So I am looking up sources that are going to confirm what I believe I already know about magic. So I have an opinion on what magic is from over 30 years ago when I first started looking into this kind of stuff back in the 90s. And now I'm looking for resources to support that. Zoroastrianism as a source was one of those. And on this Britannica site, it of course talks about stuff with it being an Islamic religion over there from Iran, that it had to do with the Persians, so the Iranian, Zoroastrian, Iranian, Persian immigrants, what they were known as, talks about nature and significance, and it also talks about some of the doctrines that might have influenced magic, as well as influencing Judaism and the birth of Christianity. And I am starting to discover more and more Christians and Christian scholars who kept magic alive, and many of the practices today that people do that are magic are in fact from Christian sources, as well as some of the Jewish sources, like with Kabbalah. Kabbalah is very big in a lot of this stuff. So I still think this is a valid origin for some of the concepts of what magic is today. I'm just bringing it up as a possible source, something to look into in the future, and when I deep dive magic, we'll definitely go back to this source. One of the things I've mentioned in one of my videos about how to do research, I mentioned using ChatGPT. an AI thing to help inspire looking at different things. I don't mean ask it and whatever it says is right. It's not always right. The point is to give you a jumping off point. Ask it a question to inspire looking deeper into things. I found a different AI chat thing that actually gives you citable resources as well as actual school document papers from universities and stuff. I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. So that's actually this new one I'm going to be using here, which is Liner. So get Liner. Now, the interesting thing, when I actually asked it specifically, I was talking about what are the origins of the word magic. They bring up one of the individuals that I've actually referenced before. She actually have a doctorate degree, Dr. Angela Puca, Angela's Symposium, who's here on YouTube. I've recommended her as one of my recommended sources. So she's actually brought up here as well. She actually has a video on some of the origins of the word magic. So some of this stuff actually comes from some of her videos because I've actually looked at them before. But on this side over here, it'll actually show you the sources. You can actually go to them. So it's not that it's pulling up stuff that you necessarily have to believe in, but it's going to pull up stuff. So again, you can deep dive and try to ask yourself if you believe in some of these sources. But the main thing that I'm bringing up here when asking this question of an AI chatbot, it's saying the word magic has a rich etymological history that traces back to several ancient languages, illustrating its evolution over time. It originated from the Old French word magique, I guess, which itself derived from the late Latin word magica, linked to Greek and ultimately to Proto-Indo-European roots. The etymology path, English term magic, originated from the Old French word, which in turn, so it's kind of repeating some of that. I know a lot of our words supposedly do come out of Latin when it comes to English words. And when it comes to the term magic, as I've understand it, the term as it first developed actually changed form, shape, and spelling a little bit, and the meaning behind what was classified under it over the years. In fact, I believe, and I'm going to pull it up because what to look for when you're talking to one of these chat things to help you research more, you got to ask questions in certain ways and try different combinations of questions to really dig to find some of your sources. But because I know who Agrippa is, and I know about his occult philosophies books, which is on my reading list, I know that he was actually responsible for some of the modern definitions of magic. So magic has changed, grown, and shifted. Now, when I was younger, I actually was very much into it. I was reading Llewellyn books, and I was talking to one person, and the individual I was speaking with, I had mentioned, hey, yeah, I'm into magic and all that. And they asked me, what's the difference between magic and magic with a K on the end? At the time, I had no idea what they're talking about. I wasn't sure. Well, then he doesn't really know what magic is, and they dismissed me altogether. I'm like, well, that's fun. The more that I looked into it as I got older, I'm like, okay, well, magic with a K. You know, Aleister Crowley, however you say his name, would put a K on the end to distinguish it from stage magic. So magic without the K is stage magic. Magic with a K is real magic. Apparently, there's been various spellings, M-A-G-I-K, M-A-G-I-C, and M-A-G-I-C-K. So there's been various different spellings for it, and it does have different meanings depending on how it was used, who was using it, which way they spelled it, and why they spelled it that way. And looking through some of the different website stuff, one of the things I was able to find, besides for some of the origins behind the word magic, including, like I said, if you want to check out Goetia and Thurgery, the Key of Solomon, Lemegeton, there's a video that deep dives some of the sources of some of these words from Angela's Symposium, which again, I think is a good source, an accredited scholar who's written peer-reviewed papers. But with the magic with a K, I have some notes here as well, because I always take down notes. A short history lesson. We can trace the use of the spelling magic with a K back to early modern English. It has been used as early as 1651 English translation of the medieval occultist Henrik Cornelius Agrippa's of Occult Philosophy. So the famous 20th century English occultist Aleister Crowley, however, is credited with resurrecting and popularizing magic with a K at the end to separate it, to make it distinct from stage magic compared to actual magic, which I would argue, and I've argued in previous videos, are pretty much the same thing. And the fact that when you were doing stage magic, even though the effect is fake, the feeling, the spell of illusion that you're weaving through entertainment is the real magic that is incorporated with fake stage magic. So I think that there is a real magic element to performance magic. So the effect might be fake, but the way that you are feeling from the performance is real. That's the magic piece that's real, in my opinion. Going back to some of these sources, because this is a rabbit hole I could dive down for a very long period of time because I love this stuff. The other thing I wanted to ask about was, what is Agrippa's definition of magic? Talking about Agrippa being responsible for some of this. So again, there's some sources here. So the conclusion is Agrippa's definition of magic encompasses a complex interplay of natural, celestial, and spiritual elements. He views magic as both an art and a philosophical discipline that involves manipulating the inherent virtues of natural objects to produce specific effects. Agrippa's work simultaneously categorizes the practice of magic, integrating theoretical and practical demonstrations, and emphasizes the relationship between celestial influences and earthly phenomenon. A lot of Agrippa's work, and a lot of the work from individuals like Francis Barrett the Magus, which is the book that I'm currently reading on Kindle, is this idea that you are working with the natural world and that you're in fact taking and interacting with divine beings such as angels. Because again, a lot of Christians wrote some of this stuff down. Then going to some of these sites off here to the right, you can actually go through, read, and say like, okay, is this site worthwhile? This, public domain review.org. Look it up and make up the opinion for yourself. Or here's another one, Magic and the Occult by Agrippa. So this is where that AI is pulling some of the stuff together from. So you can check some of this stuff out. Here's another one on Agrippa stuff. So I pulled up 3 of the sites here just to give you some examples. I'll post those links down below. So I just want to let you know, it's not like I'm just talking to Liner and saying, look, here's supporting my opinion on magic. In fact, I'm asking Liner questions to bring up sources so I can bring them up in the video. Another one I wanted to bring up, of course, was John Dee. If you don't know who John Dee is, definitely look him up. But the generalized conclusion here that's listed, John Dee's understanding of magic was deeply intertwined with his mathematical and scientific endeavors, reflecting a belief that the two domains were not mutually exclusive, but rather complementary. He perceived magic as a means of uncovering hidden truths about the world, which he believed could also be understood through numerical and mathematical principles. And then, of course, like I said, a handful of sites where his stuff is basically coming from. John Dee, who he was. Here's another one about John Dee here. So we're talking the Smithsonian Magazine. Over here is the museum one. And those are just some two sites that I wanted to pull up there. And then Francis Barrett, because I mentioned the Magus, because I'm reading it currently on my Kindle. I'm not going to reach and grab it. I'm sure you've seen what a Kindle is and you've seen me mention it and bring it up before. But Francis Barrett's definition of magic is deeply rooted in the concept of inner power and its connection to the external world. He suggests that true magical power arises from within the individual, stemming from an appropriate inner disposition that enables a connection between the inner man and the external objects. And this theme, especially in modern occultism, is common, where the idea that the divine spark is inside of us and we can influence the world around us through our will, and all of it is natural. Now, in the Magus, it actually talks about a lot of natural phenomenon or different types of sympathetic magic where you're doing something to make it happen elsewhere, like this whole direction of forces and will through ceremonial or ritualistic means. And then, of course, there's like a PDF that talks about some of his stuff that you can read through. Of course, I would just go to the Magus itself. So there's different sites with the Magus. They're online that you can read. I prefer the Kindle version. And then the last thing that I was going to ask about was, where does this one quote come from? So one of the quotes, and I've mentioned this in previous vlogs, and I wanted to find it. I always like to say, yesterday's magic is today's science. And I don't know where it comes from, but I like the concept because, as I was saying earlier, I genuinely believe that science and magic are kind of two halves of the same coin. They're very connected. A lot of people say don't mix religion, science, and magic, and I think all three can work very well together. Just my opinion. But apparently this phrase has come from numerous individuals throughout the years, like Alan Dean Foster, today's science is yesterday's magic. Mitesh Khatri says, and this is closest to the quote that I know, yesterday's magic is today's science. And today's magic is tomorrow's science. So there's some other ones, just a couple quotes on there that I was able to find again on that chat. And then the last one, I like to quote a fictional comic book from DC Comics. The Phantom Stranger is talking to Timothy Hunter in this book that I have. It's a comic book completely fictional, but I like the usage of the words here. So the Phantom Stranger says, science is a way of talking about the universe in words that bind it to a common reality. Magic is a method of talking to the universe in words that it cannot ignore. And then he says the two are rarely compatible. I don't care about that piece, but I care about the idea of science is about talking about the universe, where magic is talking to the universe in a way it can't ignore. I think that illustrates this very interesting and fascinating idea behind magic. So the reason, of course, I brought all of this up was to kind of support the idea of how I personally view magic. It's not just a personal opinion, but it's based upon reading that I've done, research that I've done, and I want to do further research and reading, delving into different practices, why they're called magic. Because apparently Agrippa, who of course was born in the 15th century, died in the 16th century, that he kind of started pulling all these different practices underneath that umbrella term magic. Magic is an umbrella term. I've had conversations with people who try to translate words into magic. And I'm like, do you understand what magic is? Because magic in and of itself is very generic, and it can be applied in different ways. That's why I feel I have the ability to apply it to different forms of creative art and self-expression, like music, sculpting, painting, drawing, because I feel like those are different ways of manifesting. You're using the tools here and you're bringing about something. You're bringing something into being through your will and through divine inspiration. In modern Druidry, we would refer to this as Awen or Emos, divine inspiration. So you are producing through this. And it can work with any religion, and everybody is capable of doing it. And the methods of which you use just depends on the methods. If it's art, it's a little bit more grounded in what most people would consider reality. But even if it's just in a spiritual nature where you are praying, where you're saying affirmations I've mentioned, meditating, focusing your mind, clearing your mind, wanting to heal and focus on the idea of being healed. There are ceremonial practices in ceremonial magic that involve altars and candles and incense. There's different things that you can do that will bring forth different types of magic into the world. So again, if anybody ever asks you, how do you do magic? Depends. What type of magic are you seeking? Everybody is capable of doing it. Even if you don't have a natural knack for it, you can learn it over time by understanding the universe, the world you live in, and looking at different ways of communicating with that universe in ways it can't ignore, to quote a comic book. Because again, I like the way that that's expressed. Those are my thoughts on magic. That's who I think can do it. That's what I think magic is. And as always, if you like these videos, consider interacting and subscribing. And what are your thoughts? What do you consider magic? What is or what is not magic? And have you heard of some of these concepts that I brought up of what magic might be? Have you heard of some of these authors or read about them? Share your thoughts below. I love reading it. I love interacting. And I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.